Okay, here we have the various pieces laid out for the spray booth. The bottom, I have two pieces here. I have the pegboard that I will use as the surface mount and the actual bottom itself. You can see the pegboard is about a 1/2 inch smaller on each side. That's because this is 1/2 inch plywood and the sides are going to go around that bottom. I want the bottom to enclose the whole thing instead of just having the sides overlap the bottom. There's the front. Here's the back. I'm going to put a piece of pegboard in the back. That way I can hang parts from the pegboard as I'm painting. And the two sides and the top. I had a little bit of trouble on the sides getting that 45-degree angle. Well, I didn't have problems cutting the 45-degree angle. I had problems getting it even on both sides and matching the top, but I got that done. What's left now is just to do some sanding. Once I'm done with the sanding, I can start putting her together and cutting holes for the electrical. I will discuss the electrical in a short segment later in this build. Thank you. Okay, a quick note about the saw I'm using. Yes, it's a Makita saw. I've had this saw for a good 15-20 years. I've loaned it to a few people who've remarked that it doesn't look like it's that old. It's because I clean the crud out of it every time I use it. And oops, I see some spots I've not cleaned. This isn't a typical circular saw. This is what they call a worm drive saw. One of the reasons I'm using it is torque and centrifugal force. Torque is a force that causes rotation. Centripetal force is how you can ride a bicycle with two tires and stay balanced on those two tires. Okay? When you use a saw like this one, the torque of the motor forces the saw down into the surface you're cutting. That allows you to cut a straight line. Now, a lot of saws have the motor mounted this way on the shaft. A lot of circular saws have that, the cheaper ones. Those are hard to cut a straight line with because when that motor starts spinning, centrifugal force tries to pull it out of a straight line. That's one of the reasons why I use this saw for cutting straight lines and panels. This thing cuts a straight line real well. Just a quick note on the saw I'm using. Okay, now that I got all the parts cut and sanded, we're going to talk electrical. Many different kinds of electrical boxes. I needed two, one for a switch and one for a plug. I'm going to put a plug on the side of this cabinet so I can plug my air compressor in. It's going to be controlled by the switch. Okay? This is the electrical box I originally bought. The problem is it needs to be mounted from the rear to your wall. I don't have a rear wall on this. It's going to be mounted on the side of the cabinet, kind of like that. You know, and the mounting bolts are back here. That's not going to work. So I went and got this box over here. This box is designed to be mounted in drywall. It doesn't need to be mounted to any other support. Okay? Only problem is it's a little loose and flimsy, but with these extra mounting screws, I can screw them in from the rear. This box is going to work just fine. The only thing I'm worried about with it is this box here has plenty of plugs on the side so I can have access to wiring once the box is installed. This box doesn't have that. It has these little gripper things on the side. You punch them out and you put your wires through them and they hold the wire in place. I don't like that, especially since I'm using a three-way switch on this, so I can control the lights, the fan for the air spray booth, and the plug for the air compressor. That's why I have three switches, a three-way switch on it. Okay, now moving on from there, bathroom fan. This is a bathroom ceiling fan. Okay, many different types of that. The cheapest one I saw was for $14.95 at my local home improvement store. This was not the $14.95 model. I was not paying attention. This one came with a light kit. I don't need the light kit. Okay, but hey, you know, I wasn't paying attention to that. I was paying attention to how much air it moved and how quiet it was. This one moves 80 cubic feet per minute, and it was one of the quieter models. I was more worried about sound and amount of air than anything else, so I did not buy the cheapest fan I could get my hands on. This one cost me, I think it was like $55 versus, you know, like I said, the cheapest one I found was $14.95. And it was a much smaller profile because this one's designed to have a light mounted to it. That one is not. Okay, that larger profile is going to cause me some issues later because I have to give sufficient clearance for the air to flow into the fan. Now, this fan has its mounting brackets on the side and not the bottom. I'd rather they were on the bottom. That would make me a lot happier. So I had to cut this extra piece of wood. I'm going to mount it to this piece of wood. I'm going to mount the piece of wood to the base of the spray booth. It also has a standard 4-inch duct on the side of it. That's great because that's the same size as dryer hose. So I can mount a flexible dryer hose off the end of the spray booth. I've also got an aluminum tube to reach to the end of the spray booth from here to the end of the booth so that I do not have an issue with crimped hose or anything inside the booth. I also want to seal the whole inside the booth so airflow is only coming from where I'm spraying paint instead of through the seams. Alright, we'll be back after this is mounted and discuss cutting holes for the electrical boxes and the ducting. Here's a quick little tip. When drilling into wood, if you don't want your drill bit going all the way through the piece of wood, take a piece of tape, measure how deep you want that drill to go, and then tape it. The reason I say this is I'm countersinking these holes for my electrical boxes, and I don't want the hole going all the way through. So I use a piece of tape to gauge how deep the hole should go. All right. Okay, here we are. Here's what I've accomplished so far. These are the side rails. These are the rails the filter and the pegboard are going to rest upon. One thing I didn't do when I first set up the side rails is I did not give enough clearance on the end for all four of them to sit together. I thought about mitering them at 45-degree angles so they sit all flush together. And I said to myself, no, who's going to see this? No one's going to see this. So I didn't. So I ended up trimming two of them down. The screws are countersunk because I didn't have screws that were quite long enough, but they hold on well enough I can pick the thing up by that. This 1/2-inch plywood, it's not all that light. Those are on there really good. Okay? Now, this is a hole for my outlet box. Remember one of these things? It's my hole for my outlet box. It's going to sit on there like that. Actually, it sits on there like that. Okay? I've got these holes pre-drilled so that I can just screw this thing on once I get the wiring done. I'm going to do the wiring first and then screw it down. Because the way these boxes are, I could knock out these slots right here and then have a lot easier time with the wiring, but I'm going to leave them the way they are. Just feed the wiring in, fix the plug, and then push it back up in there. Okay, the way you cut this hole out is you take your drill a hole big enough for your saw blade right here. You use that kind of saw right there, and you put your saw blade in, and you cut a straight line here, cut a straight line up to this corner. So you got half of it cut out. Then you cut a curvy line up to this corner. And you take the saw out, flip it over, and cut straight down. Then you cut a curvy line. I'm trying to remember which way I did this from here up to that corner. Then you cut straight back across, and you've knocked it out. The two notches on either side of this are for these holes here. These holes, those two holes hold the faceplate for the plug or the switch, so it looks pretty from the outside. You won't see any of this because it's going to be covered with a faceplate. All right, now I have also, let me move that, mounted the fan to the bottom. Okay, I'm going to end up cutting this wire off so that I can wire the fan into my switch, but I've mounted the fan to the bottom. What I have left to do tonight, and then I'm going to stop, is I want to cut a hole in the back for this exhaust vent. Okay? So that's all I have left to do tonight. It's a 4-inch diameter hole. I've got a template, which is kind of funny. My dryer exhaust kit actually came, I'll let it fall. with this, and this is the perfect template for cutting holes with. Okay, I know that's not what that's for, but that's what I'm going to use it for. I'm going to use it as a template for cutting the hole in the back over there. So, when I come back, I'm going to talk about how I plan to assemble the sides to the base and the top to the sides. Okay? Until next time.